In 1989, Benny Hill filmed a sketch that would quietly mark the beginning of the end of his career. For decades, his comedy had entertained millions across the world with slapstick humor and playful energy. But this one moment was different. Within just 48 hours of airing, over 20,000 complaints flooded in. Viewers were no longer laughing, they were uncomfortable. Sponsors quickly pulled out, protests began, and even loyal fans started turning away. The backlash was intense and immediate. What shocked everyone most was how fast the industry reacted. Executives didn't defend him, they distanced themselves. Some even pushed to remove traces of the episode entirely. This wasn't just criticism, it was a complete shift in how comedy was being judged. The world had changed, and suddenly, Hill's style felt out of place. What was once considered harmless fun was now being questioned on a much deeper level. A comedy legacy begins. Benny Hill's humor didn't appear overnight. It was rooted deeply in his family. His grandfather worked as a circus clown, mastering physical comedy and audience interaction. His father carried that tradition forward, turning their home into a training ground for performance. From a young age, Hill was taught timing, expressions, and the art of making people laugh without saying much. These early lessons shaped everything he later became. Even simple household moments became practice sessions. This constant exposure gave him a natural feel for comedy. It wasn't just talent, it was training combined with passion. Over time, Hill developed a unique ability to connect with audiences instantly. His style was fast, visual, and universal. These foundations would later help him dominate television. But they also locked him into a form of comedy that would struggle to evolve as the world around him began to change. From army life to television fame. During World War II, Hill served in the British Army, where he entertained fellow soldiers with jokes and performances. These small shows became his first real stage. They helped him learn how to read audiences and adapt quickly. After the war, television became his big opportunity. In 1949, he appeared on early BBC programs, where he quickly stood out. Unlike others, he understood how TV worked: quick cuts, visual jokes, and exaggerated expressions. His creativity helped redefine comedy for the screen. By the early 1950s, he wasn't just performing, he was shaping the future of televised humor. Audiences loved his energy, and his popularity grew rapidly. This led to the creation of The Benny Hill Show, which would soon become one of the most recognized comedy programs in the world. The rise of a global icon. The Benny Hill Show quickly became a massive success. By the 1970s, it was attracting over 20 million viewers in the UK alone. Its appeal went far beyond language because it relied on visual comedy. The show spread to more than 90 countries, making Hill an international star. His sketches, chase scenes, and exaggerated humor became instantly recognizable. The famous theme music and fast-paced style added to its charm. At its peak, the show was earning millions and dominating ratings. Hill had full creative control, writing most of the material himself. This independence allowed him to maintain a consistent style, but it also meant fewer outside influences. While his fans loved it, critics began to question whether the format was evolving. Still, for years, Hill remained one of the most powerful figures in comedy television. The team behind the laughter. Will didn't build his success alone. He worked with talented performers who became essential to the show. Henry McGee played the calm, serious character that balanced the chaos. Jackie Wright became famous for his physical comedy and iconic reactions. Bob Todd added another layer of humor with his expressive performances. Together, they created a unique comedic rhythm. Their chemistry made the show feel complete. Each performer had a specific role, and Hill carefully selected people who could match his fast-paced style. This team dynamic was a major reason for the show's long-lasting success. However, as time passed, even this strong formula began to feel repetitive to newer audiences, changing times and growing criticism. By the late 1980s, society was changing. Comedy was no longer judged only by how funny it was, but also by its message. Critics began targeting Hill's content, especially his portrayal of women. Comedian Ben Elton openly criticized the show, calling it outdated and harmful. His comments sparked a wider debate. What was once seen as harmless humor now felt inappropriate to many viewers. Younger audiences were shifting towards smarter, more modern comedy styles. Shows like The Young Ones reflected this new direction. Hill's work, in comparison, began to look old-fashioned. The gap between generations grew wider, and his audience slowly started shrinking. The controversial sketch. The 1989 sketch became the breaking point. Unlike previous jokes, this one crossed a line for many viewers. The humor felt uncomfortable rather than funny. Critics described it as outdated and insensitive. Complaints poured in rapidly, setting records. Media outlets strongly criticized the show, and public opinion shifted almost overnight. Sponsors began withdrawing support, which hit the production financially. This wasn't just a minor controversy, it was a turning point. The sketch exposed how far Hill's style had drifted from modern expectations. It showed that audiences were no longer willing to accept certain types of humor. For the first time, Hill's position in the industry looked unstable. The sudden cancellation. Later that same year, Hill was called into a meeting with executives. He expected to discuss future projects, but instead, he was told the show was over. The decision was final. Ratings had dropped, costs had increased, and the controversy made things worse. Despite decades of success, there was no gradual ending, just a sudden stop. Hill was reportedly shocked and deeply hurt. He had already been planning new ideas, but none of them would ever be produced. The industry that once celebrated him had moved on. This moment marked the official end of an era in British comedy. Life after the spotlight. After the cancellation of his long-running show, Benny Hill withdrew almost completely from public life. Once a constant presence on television screens, he became increasingly reclusive, avoiding interviews and rarely stepping outside his home. Those who knew him described a man who had grown quiet, cautious, and deeply private. The abrupt end of his career seemed to shake his confidence in the entertainment industry, and he turned down several offers to return to television. At the same time, his health began to decline, yet he showed little interest in pursuing serious medical treatment. Whether out of distrust, fatigue, or resignation, he chose to live on his own terms. The contrast was striking. A performer who had once filled homes with laughter now lived in near silence. To many fans, his disappearance felt sudden and unexplained, as if he had simply faded away from the world he once dominated. A quiet and tragic end. In 1992, the life of Benny Hill came to a lonely and somber close. He passed away in his apartment at the age of 68, with no one by his side. Perhaps even more heartbreaking was the fact that his death went unnoticed for several days, underscoring the isolation that had come to define his final years. For a man who had once brought joy and laughter to millions around the world, the silence surrounding his passing felt deeply tragic. Yet his story does not end only in sadness. His legacy remains layered and debated, celebrated by many as a master of physical comedy, and criticized by others as a figure whose style did not evolve with changing times. Regardless of differing opinions, his influence on television comedy is undeniable. He left behind a body of work that continues to be remembered, discussed, and revisited by audiences today.